And welcome back to the Financially Simple Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Goodbread, and today we're going to continue with our discussion in success stories. I'm joined by my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Brandon Jordan. Brother, how is Boston today?
Well, today is one of the few days we've had in a while with some rain, but other than that, it's actually a phenomenal day. We had some break in the heat, get some good rain, so life is good.
I have a question for you.
What's that?
What is your favorite type of sandwich? Have you ever thought about that?
No, why?
I just want to know, what's your favorite type of sandwich?
I'm not a picky guy, like any of them.
So, my dad's favorite type of sandwich was he loved peanut butter, bananas, and that marshmallow cream. That was his favorite sandwich. Now, I got to roll with a peanut butter and jelly. I mean, do you have a particular favorite sandwich you like?
I guess ham and cheese.
Ham and cheese. Hot ham and cheese or cold ham and cheese?
Cold.
Cold. You're not a hot type of guy, huh?
No.
Can't handle the heat. Get out of the kitchen type thing?
No, that's why I left Georgia, man. That's why I love Massachusetts.
So we're joined today by our dear friend and colleague, Mr. Tom. So before we introduce Tom in this, Brandon, I'll let you do the introduction. Let's kind of bring the listeners up to speed. Besides these hot ham and cheese sandwich, got to go hot. Wait. What type of cheese do you like?
With all due respect, you're wrong.
What type of cheese do you like on this? You American, Swiss, provolone?
Swiss all day long. Anybody who says different is just wrong.
Okay. All right. So in our Success Stories podcast, we've been talking about CPAs, and we spent our time last time, you and I kind of dissecting how we, as the financial advisor, the business consultants, view and what we think of a forward-thinking CPA. And we actually introduced Tom in our podcast last episode. So, brother, why don't you go ahead and introduce Tom, and let's walk through his bio, and then we'll dive into what his perspective, Tom, what your perspective is on a forward-thinking CPA.
This is just as a recap for the listeners. We like the CPA, the forward-thinking CPA on first base, because they just play such a crucial role in what we're trying to help the business owners accomplish. They're both offensive, defense. And candidly speaking, it took me a long time to find a CPA that I, was comfortable putting all of my clients in front of. And it just so happens I came across Tom Barrick, I'll introduce in just a second. But I came across him through a mutual colleague, and I was at a seminar with him, and he was asking some very forward-thinking questions. And my thought was, wait, who is this guy? So I went to my peer and I said, look, I know you have that relationship, but I'm sorry, he's mine. So that fostered a long relationship where just over the last, I think it's been 4 or 5 years now, Tom, where we've been working together. But Tom is he's a friend. He's also a fellow CFP, Justin, and listeners. He's also a CPA. And so Tom brings a wealth of both experience and I'll call it thought leadership, just helping clients think through problems. So you guys have heard me talk about being a thinking partner. So I love doing that for clients. Tom is also that for me. So Tom, look, I'm happy to have you on the episode today. Look forward to talking with you and let readers hear how you think, or listeners hear how you think.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Tom Barrick, partner at Waldron Rand and Company, based here in Dedham, Mass, just outside of Boston. And I specialize in working with owner-managed businesses, real estate clients, people with international tax issues. And I just can't thank you guys enough for having me on. And my favorite kind of sandwich, I gotta go steak and cheese. Although Italian is also very good. Although as I've gotten older, the heartburn's kind of crept up on me a little bit. And I thought you guys down in Georgia only ate pimento cheese. Like literally, I thought that's the only thing that people in Georgia ate. So
there's nothing wrong with a good pimento cheese sandwich, brother. Let me tell you.
I need to reframe my introduction. This is my former friend, Tom Barrick.
I love it. So wait, on the cheesesteak, are we talking Philly style, or what type of cheesesteak is your sandwich?
You can't go that nacho cheese stuff on. You got to have like the real deal with the peppers, onions. The real deal, real cheese, not the cheese whiz.
Gotcha. So, Tom, as we dive into this world here, you mentioned inside your introduction that you typically deal with small business owners. If you had to kind of paint a persona, is the word we often use, a particular client that you said, man, if I could rock it out with this one type of client more than anything else, what would that be? And the reason why I ask is because I want to allow you to kind of speak to the heart of the listener base, because we have a lot of different listeners here, and I want them to realize that, hey, you're an expert in this area. So what would be that persona that you would say, man, Justin, if I could meet with this type of client, this is who I'd love to work with?
Absolutely. So I would say, just to give a little background on the firm, we have a wide range of clients. We have startup businesses all the way up to, we have clients that do several $100 million in revenue that we do audits for. That being said, probably a sweet spot would be someone between 5 million, 40 million in revenue, something like that. Typically, that's either a family business, and you guys know what I mean by family business, not mom and pop, a family business where you got the business was founded and is still currently run by the owner. Might have transitioned to a second generation, in some cases even a third. As you get into that, things start to spin off, because for those particular people, their business is their life. So that's why it's so important. When we talk about tax planning, I've talked to you guys about this before. It's so hard to distinguish the person from the business, because the business drives their personal financial side. And, things start to spin out of there, whether it be investments in real estate, private investments. They start to want to establish trusts. They start to plan for their kids, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the type of relationships that we excel at.
So, Tom, whenever you're dealing with those potential new relationships, many times in our world, the planning world, we'll have a client that'll call us and say, hey, I want to do a written financial plan, or I want to increase the value of my company by X number of dollars to prepare for an exit. Or, you know what, I tried to sell my business, it just didn't work. And ultimately, in our planning world, we often see that the CPA or the advisor in the accounting world is just not equipped to be able to handle the client's business that we're dealing with. So we make an introduction to a forward-thinking CPA like you. Whenever you meet a prospective client, what is the sales pitch? What's the sales pitch? I know you typically are getting recommendations from advisors or from attorneys or other CPAs even. I've seen that happen. I know you've experienced that. But what's the sales pitch that you would tell a prospective client so they would understand that, hey, I'm not a, quote, bean counter. I'm a forward-thinking planner here that happens to work as a CPA?
Yeah. So I think there's two parts to that. One is the firm sales pitch, which is that we've been around with the same name since 1912. So we have a really long history. As far as we know, I got to give the plug, or our managing partner would kill me. But as far as we know, we are the oldest CPA firm in the country with the same name. So we've been around for a really long time. We have about 50 people. We work on everything as a team. And what we have as a value add is we basically offer partner level attention to these type of businesses that at a small firm, say, 5 people or sometimes sole practitioner, they've outgrown that one person, or so they've come up against something complex. Their life has grown. They're getting into the next level of things. They're not sure they're getting good advice. Their life has gone from, okay, minimize my taxes by doing whatever you have to do, to, okay, I'm thinking about doing A, B, and C. What do you think about that? And then also we get a lot of clients from larger firms who might fit revenue-wise with a larger firm, but they're not getting that attention. What they seek is actually partner-level attention to bring them up to speed on their planning. And to your point, what I always say is the best measure, I think, is if you're working with someone, you're not sure they're the right person. You ask your CPA, how busy are you in November and December? And if they say, oh, that's normally when I go to Florida for a month or whatever, you're probably not with the right person.
So whenever you have an introduction from someone like Brandon or Justin, as we're looking at cost, because you're CFP, you understand that costs are so important to individuals. Whenever I hear that you're going to have partner level, man, that's awesome. Number one, to have partner level type of work on the average business, family style business. I understand that, or I would assume that comes with an additional cost, maybe that customer, that business owner is not used to paying. How do we get around this idea that professional advice is expensive? Tom, man, that sounds like a great offering, but dude, you're just stinking expensive. How in the world how could I justify that cost?
I think there's two things.
How do you turn it from a cost to an investment?
Sure. I think there's two parts to that. One is, and I do this, and I actively believe in this, which is, what is your time worth, right? What is your time worth as a business owner? Take what you make in a year, divide it by 2,080, come up with what your hourly rate is, and then tell me what it's worth to you to have the freedom to not have to manage this person and run over, making sure that they're doing the right thing, keeping you up at night. So there's that element of it, right? Which is I just want to have somebody that I work with that gets it done and does it. And then the other is, like Brandon was talking about, it's a value proposition. We recently I'll give you an example. We came into a situation. We came up with a client. The client owned a significant amount of real estate. They also owned an operating business. And we realized they were paying a lot of money in taxes.
Yep.
And for this particular person, once we ran through everything, which is what we do, we ask to see copies of prior year return, and we know about what it would take to get it done the right way, planning, answering questions throughout the year. And we break it down like that. We say, this is what it costs to prepare the return. This is what it costs to do the tax planning. And this is kind of your mystery bucket. Now, your mystery bucket might be 0 in some years, and some years it might be 10,000. You might acquire a company. I don't know what it's going to be. Then we kind of phrase it like that. But in this particular case, when the client told us how much we were paying, we told them, well, we're going to be 3 times that. And they said, well, how am I supposed to justify that? And in this case, we went back through and we said, well, here's all the work we're going to do. We're not just making up numbers. We know how much work it's going to take to do it right. In this particular case, we came up with the idea of doing a cost segregation study on a number of properties. We found out that it worked for this client because they were truly a real estate professional. Even though they operated their other business, they spent 4 hours a week there, but they had significant cash flow because they brought in a CEO who had run in the place. So they kind of stepped back, but they were still making a lot of money. And then also, as I told Brandon, it's kind of funny, I actually texted them and said, hey, has anybody reached out to you? Do you have all your stuff together for your PPP loan? This was a couple months ago. He said, what's PPP loan? And so once I explained it to him, we applied. This particular person got $900,000. In addition to that, their CPA had done a tax plan for them and told them to set aside $800,000 for taxes due in April. And through doing the cost segregation study, we're going to cut that in half.
So Tom, just to follow up on that, you talked about the 3 different buckets. I think you said tax compliance, tax planning, and then the mystery bucket.
Yep.
So you just said something that in my mind, I see a little bit differently. You talked about tax planning. The former CPA said, hey, here, you need to plan to pay, which in my mind
Yes.
is very different than how do we plan to minimize that in the future.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So can you talk a little bit more about like the tax planning?
Absolutely. So we always reach out to nearly every single one of our clients because my whole thing is, quite honestly, between all of us, if you're not using us to do a tax plan, if you're not looking forward like that, you're probably not using us properly, and that's really where the value is. Otherwise, we're just going to be a very expensive tax preparer. Yes, do we know the law? Of course we know the law. Yes, but we make sure that you're in good shape, of course. But if we reach out and say, we really think you guys should be doing a tax plan, and you choose not to do it, there's a lot of benefit lost there. Well, what we basically do is once we get through the 10/15 deadline, and obviously we're doing this more throughout the year, but it's very busy for us from October 15th through call it the end of the year because we're making adjustments. We're figuring out how much people will owe. We're figuring out how much they should do for bonuses. We're helping them figure out how much they might want to do for profit sharings in a given year. We're helping them make decisions of, do you have any large looming expenses that are going to come up in January, February, or March? Are you on the cash basis? Should we consider paying those now? All those different types of things that come into play. And then we make recommendations. And then at least, I always say this to clients, I don't mind telling you in November that you owe a lot of money, because that means that you had a really good year, something went the right way, et cetera, and you have 4 months to figure out how to come up with the money. I don't want to tell you that in April, because I do not like surprises. It's not a good way to have a relationship. And quite honestly, you're probably just going to leave because you're going to say, you didn't do a good job. I paid so much in taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So.
And just sort of a tack on question to that, because you've heard us talk about or heard me talk about the success team in the past. When new clients come in and they hear about, an increase in, call it your hourly rate, et cetera, can you speak a little bit to how working together as a team, because we know that, at least in my experience, Waldron Rand is really good at working with other professionals. How might that also mitigate some of the call it the new expenses that business owners may think when they begin to engage a forward-thinking and advisor-receptive CPA? Absolutely.
And not only are you going to have, when everybody's on the same page, you're naturally going to have more efficiencies, right? Mm-hmm. which is going to bring down costs. But also the other thing that you're going to have is, if you and I aren't speaking, and you sell an investment and generate a large capital gain, and I know that the business has a huge income year, that person's going to be mad at both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal is that we have such a relationship with yourself, with other professionals, that when tax planning time rolls around, I know that I reach right out to you. I ask you for the gain and loss statements. I ask you for the interest and dividends for the year. So we don't even have to really communicate with the client on that. We leave them out. There's a seamless process because, quite honestly, that's what they want. I mean, they want us to be talking. They want us to be engaging. They want, in certain situations, they want us to be involved in other things. For example, estate planning. It might be insurance-related matters or whatever the case may be. And I think you guys said this in your previous podcast, which I think is absolutely right, which is that you guys are the catcher. I love that analogy. Fortunately, I played first base in high school, so I was actually pretty good at it. I'm not gonna lie, but anyway, so but it's a perfect analogy because, and this is the way I always look at it, which is that you guys are in charge. You're calling the play, but when I look at it, like when the first baseman is taking the throw from the outfield, right? What's their job, right? They're the cutoff man. If it was in center field or right field, I'm the cutoff man of the catcher. And what's the catcher supposed to be doing? He's supposed to be lining me up, right? Left, right, kind of telling me where to go. And if the throw is coming from left field, Brandon, where's the first baseman supposed to be?
Behind home plate.
You got it, man. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Those are the type of things that, seriously, I know it's an analogy, I know you guys, but I was thinking about that because it's a perfect way to explain how we can operate as a cohesive unit to make this client experience better.
So, Tom, I have a question for you. With that in mind, you know, you're a CFP as well. So you have a little different perspective than a lot of CPAs who've never gone through that particular training or do not have the mark. What other team members, from your perspective, that roving first base player, you know, who's lining me up coming from left field, right field, behind me, depending on which way it's coming from, what are the other team members that you just feel are vital? You know, I often say there's a three-legged milk stool. I grew up in the country in South Georgia eating my pimento cheese sandwich, mind you. Okay. But I grew up in the country in South Georgia, and I often say, you know, you have to have the CFP, you have to have a CPA, and you have to have an attorney. Those are my three legs of the milk stool. What are the CPAs that you view? I'm sorry, what are the success team? Who makes the success team up from your eyes as it relates to that particular experience?
Absolutely. And I also want to take one second just to clarify for everybody, and I know you guys know this, but for all your listeners, we don't manage any assets here. I'm a CFP because of the fact that I previously did manage assets. We no longer manage assets. We never have at Waldron Rand. We never will. And I like to keep the designation because I think that it works well when I'm dealing with professionals such as yourselves. Something comes up, you know that we can talk the talk. You call me up and you say, hey, I got this, so-and-so wants to do a 72T. Yep, no problem. I got it. Boom, we're running, we're hitting the ground.
Right.
So, but to answer your question, as far as professionals go, obviously estate planning attorney is key to this. Insurance person, right? And that could be multiple. It could be, you know, casualty insurance. Obviously you guys, obviously you got life, disability, all those kind of things. And then as you get into, when you're talking about small business owner though, you're going to have the estate plan attorney, but the estate plan attorney is probably going to be different from the general counsel attorney. And then you might even have an IP attorney. And I know that certain people don't really love attorneys, but I love how in this day and age, we've become so hyper-focused on what you do best. So in some instances, it might make sense to engage 4 different attorneys for 4 different things than have just one person. Oh, that's John, he's my attorney, he does A, B, and C. There is a role for that. Absolutely, it's great to have a general counsel, and sometimes they're very good about branching out and picking up professionals, but to me, those are absolutely critical.
So just a kind of a follow-up question to that, Tom. So in your mind, like, because I know you guys work closely with other members of the success team, as we've talked about, are there some things that either from a pragmatic or a mindset standpoint that you wish the other members of the team knew about you as the CPA or knew about the role you can play? What are some things you just wish other folks knew about you or wish they would ask you or of you?
You guys brought up something that in your podcast previously that was really good, which is you were telling kind of an anecdotal story about a CPA that you went to and you brought up an idea and they didn't like the idea because it wasn't their idea. So I think the most important thing is communication and making sure that everybody's on the same page, and also just understanding who you are and what type of clients you work with, and what your business is and what you specialize in. So I think that's incredibly important, and also just how our business works. So for example, here we have multiple layers. We have staff. We have obviously our administrative team, and kind of knowing who the players are. So if you need to get something done, who's kind of the person to go to. I think that's always key. That's another thing too, which is if you're always going to want to communicate with me, to your point earlier, Justin, yeah, it's going to be more expensive because my bill rate's 3 times some of my youngest staff. That's a big difference, you know?
And just one other thing to add to that, Tom, that I have valued with working with you guys over the years is like the world of tax, right? Tax and accounting is very broad, right? Different areas of expertise. And, to me, one of the things I love when I'm trying to add a member to the success team for the clients we serve is I love the willingness to say, I don't know, when you ask a subject matter expert something, right? And we don't try to be so myopic that we only try to do it in-house. If there's something that we're incapable of doing in-house, most advisor receptive success team professionals have no problem recommending someone that's not currently on the team.
Correct.
Correct. At the end of the day, if the client wins, we all win.
Exactly.
So Tom, as we kind of wrap this particular episode up, I often ask a question to the guests on the show, and that is a word of wisdom. And so let me give you my question. I'm gonna kind of give you some dialogue so you can think about an answer here. My question is this: if today was your last day, and these are your last breath of words to give business owners, so I'm gonna put some gravity on this particular statement. You enter this particular question with, what words would you leave to the business owners out there who are hearing you, the CPA, the MSA, the CFP, the subject matter expert, that first baseman, right? The person that is, in my opinion, on that 3-legged milk stool, just vital, ultra vital to the success of the individuals. If you had one statement to leave them with, what would it be? And as you think about that, friends, what I want you to hear is, oftentimes I'll say the Internal Revenue Code is one of the greatest wealth creation tools that we have in our system today. And those who understand it, man, they can benefit from it greatly. And what you've heard today is the thinking. Did you hear Tom as he was going through his explanation saying, hey, look, we're in October, in November and December, going ahead and projecting what you need to deal with before the year is wrapped up. And you've heard me preach about this on the podcast for the last 4 years, that once you go past December 31st, you've drastically limited your tax planning capabilities. So now you're in a reactionary mode versus a proactive mode. So, I think that is vital. Just great to hear yet another expert in the industry, Tom, just driving that point home. So I circle back around to the question as this. Man, this is your last moment. You got, let's say, 500,000 people who potentially going to hear you say these words, who are business owners, who are hanging on your every bated breath, right? Every word is coming out of your mouth. They're going to be like, man, give it to me. Tom, what would that word of wisdom be that you would leave business owners with today?
So Brandon and I actually talk about this a lot, and we always say this, which is, I always tell people you should spend more time working on your business and less time working in your business. I know you guys have brought that up as well. The only way you can possibly do that is you have to know your numbers. You have to be able to get good, usable financial data. And for example, you could work with the best forward-thinking CPA, and you could sign up to work with us and be a great, we need a great tax plan, et cetera, et cetera. We get to November and I say, okay, run me the year-to-date financials, and you can't put it together, it is worthless. The only way you will ever be able to get to the point where you have financial freedom, where you feel like at ease, where you can actually operate your business without some of the stresses of, I don't know where all my numbers are, I don't know if I'm going to pay X or 3 times X, is if you actually take the time and invest in having your numbers set up properly, so that you should be able to push a button and print out a dashboard of all the important financial ratios that you need.
Tom, man, I appreciate that. I got to tell you, if I could say amen on this particular thing, as we do here in the South when we go to church, I would. It's from the top of my lungs. Hey, look, buddy, if people had questions for you, or they like, man, I'm looking for a forward-thinking CPA who can work on a national level. We have lots of listeners who have businesses in multi-states right now. I know that's something that your firm can do. How would they reach out to you? Would you send them to the website? Would you go, where would you send them to for them to reach out to you?
Either our website or absolutely you could email me. I won't give my cell phone out on the podcast here, but you could email me at tomb@waldronrand.com. You can find us at waldronrand.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk to anybody who has a question.
Awesome, buddy. And what we'll do is we'll picture all those contact forms are inside the show notes here, whether you're on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. For some reason, is having a lot of listeners. I don't know if it's age demographic, whatever. Wherever you're listening to the podcast on, check out in the show notes below. You'll have all of Tom's particular contact information. If you're checking us out on YouTube, you get to see Brandon's beautiful face. I mean, every Monday when we do this every other week, I love to have his face on there. So you get to see Brandon's beautiful face. I have a face for radio that kind of scares the roaches out of our building, so don't look at that, but we'll put the information inside the show notes there on YouTube as well. Tom, brother, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys for having me. This is a lot of fun.
So look, friends, I realize life is hard. I do. Man, we're dealing with some amazing things in our country right now that is heartbreaking, but I realize life is hard. It's heartbreaking for so many people. Life is hard. Life is good though. Life is good. They have rain in Boston and we have sunshine here in East Tennessee, and I'm going to go eat some pimento cheese sandwich on the back of my tailgate now and maybe play a banjo while I'm doing that. But nonetheless, life is good. Life can be frustrating.
I'm not gonna play that one down.
Life can be frustrating. It can be. But look, money, it doesn't have to be. Hey, we're going to continue to make your lives at least financially simple. Until next time, y'all go out and make it. It's not going to happen unless you make it. Make it a great day.